Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Croker of Stampin' with Kim, Arlene, and I am from the suburbs of Vancouver on the west coast of Canada. I just wanted to show you a couple of cards today. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video, a YouTube video with a technique I use a fair bit, which is a watercolor wash background. This is a similar technique, but it is a little bit different. And I'm just going to show you a couple the cards that we're going to make in this video. They both use the same technique for the background, same technique, same colors. I used for these the Grassy Grove stamp set and the Grove dies, which is a coordinating die set that goes with that. And it's a technique that you can use for all sorts of backgrounds, and it's a lot of fun. It's different. This is a variation of a technique that I learned a few years ago from a demonstrator named Cheryl Graff in the United States, and I hope you enjoy looking at how to make these cards. All right, let's get started. For this watercolor wash background technique, I'm going to be using the Stampin' Up! Ink refills. And I'll use three colors, the Fresh Freesia, Balmy Blue, and Tahitian Tide. Now I'm going to be putting those drops of ink into a small paint palette. And the other supplies that I'm going to need at this time are a Stampin' Up! Water painter or a small paintbrush, and a Stampin' Up! Spritzer, or just some kind of something you can spritz water onto your paper with. And also I've got a little jar of water to clean my aqua painter with, my water painter, and I've got a container of water. So I'll get these out of the way. This is different from the technique that I did a couple of weeks ago. And this one you're going to use some running water. So I'm going to use a piece of the fluid watercolor paper, and it is 5 inches wide by 3.5 inches tall. I'm going to spritz it on the back of the paper about 3 or 4 times. This helps it to stop from curling as much. And then I'm going to take some water and just pour over the paper. Now, it's probably easier for you to do this at your sink. Once the water is over, just put it on a paper towel. And you are going to want it to be fairly wet. So I've also got the spritzer to sort of add some water to that if it is drying. I'm going to add little drops of ink into the water. And that, as you can see, is not wet enough. The water or the ink should just be able to flow. And I'm going to add some more water to that as I go to make sure it doesn't seep too quickly into the paper. And this is the Fresh Freesia that I'm starting with. I'll clean out my brush and then go to the Balmy Blue. You can use this with lots of different color combinations. You just want to make sure that you don't end up with colors that when you are mixing them together, they get kind of muddy. So you could just try those out a little bit first before you get started. This is a great background technique for all sorts of different ideas. The one that we're going to do is with the Grassy Grove, and it will be some scenery that goes on top. And I'll show you another alternate for that at the end. Now, the best thing to do with this is just to let it dry naturally, sitting on top of a paper towel. I usually leave mine overnight. If you can leave it overnight. If you're in a real hurry, you could dry it with a heat tool. You want to make sure that you're not just sort of blowing all the color off the paper, and you will want to probably try heating it with a heat tool from the back of the paper. But if you can just let it dry, that's probably the best thing. Now, you don't want it to have puddles. I've got a couple of puddles here, and I think I would just like to sort of get that excess ink off. And I'll just tip the color a little bit toward the edge of the paper. You can sort of move it around how you'd like it to be. I think I'm actually just going to add a little bit more of the fresh Freesia into here. This is a great technique because you will never end up with the same thing twice. So it's fun to play around with, come up with all sorts of different ideas. All right, I'm going to leave that now and let it dry, and then we'll be back for the next part. Okay then, I have let this dry naturally overnight. As you can tell, it does get a lot more faded as it dries, so keep that in mind when you're adding your ink so that you know about what kind of look that you want to end up with. I'm going to use my Stamparatus to stamp this now, and I'm going to do that because I want a really nice, crisp, dark black on all of this. And I'll just pop this in here. Because I have a cling stamp, I do not need the foam mat in the Stamparatus. I just need to have just the base there. And I am using Tuxedo Black Memento ink to stamp all of what I'm putting on here. I'm going to do the ground with this first. And I will be doing this a few times to get it nice and dark. I think I've got my magnets a little bit too close. Now, because I'm using the fluid watercolor paper, it has a little bit of a texture to it, so you have to press a little bit more firmly, I suppose, than you would for just a basic white cardstock. Okay, and I'm just going to pop that out for a moment. It's not getting quite as dark as I would like it to be. There we go. All right. One more time. And then I'm going to flip this over and do my sentiment. Now, I forgot to mention that I am using the Grassy Grove stamp set, and that's this one here. I'm using the ground stamp, the deer, the trees, and the thank you, all of those in this stamp set. This is a great one. It has coordinating dies with it called Grove dies, and the Grove dies I'm going to be using as well. Oops. Okay, and then we're going to put on the trees next. You do have to move your magnets. Now I do have a little bit of a halo on top of my thank you, which I am not very excited about. I think I pressed that one a little bit too hard. Okay, and I'm going to do one more time with that, and then I'll get that deer. The Stamparatus is a great tool to use when you want to put stamps on top of each other like this, like multiples of the same stamp on top of each other to get a brighter, darker effect. It's also really good for two-step stamping, but unfortunately this product has been discontinued. So hopefully you have one of them already. All right, take that and put the plates away, get the stamp rads out of the way. And next I'm going to be using a sponge dauber with some more of the Tuxedo black ink. And I just want to add a little bit more black to this ground here. These are very handy, really inexpensive. They come 4 in a package. And they're a great way to add just a little bit of color. Okay. Now I'm thinking of covering that up with doing the tie at the top, but I don't know if that'll look a little bit weird. I'll give it a try, and if not, we'll move it. So this is 28 inches of linen thread, and I'm just going to tie that around the card twice. And I'm going to hang on to that with some reverse tweezers, not scissors. That would be really weird. Yeah, I think that looks a little bit odd at the top, so I'm going to put it at the bottom. I'd have to get creative with some rhinestones there. Now I'm going to, because this is around twice, I do want a little bit of sort of a crossed effect. Well, this is weird. I can't see the end of that tie. It's come undone, that's why. All right, let's try that again. And I'll explain about the crossed effect after we get this part done. If you need lots of twine to get that bow and not lose the ends of it, you could make it a little bit longer. I hate to be wasteful. All right, there we go. Now I want these on the back to be parallel, which means that one's got to come over a bit. And when they're parallel on the back, I can cross them on the front. So that's what the effect is I want on the back. And then you can see that's crossed over a little bit there. Okay. And I'm just going to add, there's the 28 inches of linen thread. That's not the linen thread, as you can tell. That's just a reminder to you of how much to use. And we're going to take this and put it onto a fresh piece of fresh Freesia cardstock that's 5 1/4 by 3 3/4. Now I forgot to mention, when I cut the fluid watercolor paper, the fluid watercolor paper comes in 5 by 7 inch sheets. So this is one of those 5 by 7 inch sheets cut in half. And that way you can get 2 from one sheet. And next what we're going to do is put that on a piece of basic black cardstock. And that is a usual size of 5 1/2 by 8 1/2, and it's scored at 4 1/4. Now, because of the size of the watercolor paper, I have a little bit larger of a margin at the top and the bottom. It's not even all around, but I think that just sets it off quite well. And because my twine, my linen thread, sorry, is so close to the edge, I just have to be careful to push that down a little bit. And then I'm going to put on some rhinestones. And we might need a rhinestone up here. All right, and then that's this card finished. Now I will show you a quick alternative. When I did the watercolor wash backgrounds, I did a few extras. And I thought, well, you can see they all turn out very differently. So that's kind of a fun way to do them. And I used the Grove dies. And I cut out this large one here from a regular size piece of cardstock, plus the large deer and the small deer. And so this is what it looks like with that large die cut out. And I'm just going to add this to the behind. I've got a bunch of mini dimensionals here. And I just want to cover the cutout with the watercolor wash paper. Get all those backings off there. And I want to have the fresh Freesia part at the bottom, and I'm just going to make sure that this covers up all of the holes in that. There we go. And then I've got these little deer. And just put a little tiny bit of glue on each of the feet. Oops. Just going to wipe that on there so I don't get too much on my card. And I'm just going to put the mama deer there. And then the little one, there it is, so good. Another thing I could do is put the glue, just put a little bit of glue on the silicone sheet and dip the feet in. That would work very well as well, and I wouldn't get too much. And there's that card there. All it needs would be a small sentiment that you could add on here, probably embossed in white. And I do have a few other cards that I made when I was getting a little carried away making all sorts of watercolor wash backgrounds. And as you can see, they're different every time. And I've moved the deer around a little bit compared to our original card there. So we have that on a fresh Freesia card base. This one is with Tahitian tied card base and a fresh Freesia mat. And then this one is similar to the one that we just did. All right. I hope you enjoyed that card. All right, I just wanted to pop back on for a minute to give you a little bit of Card Rescue 101. I was not happy with this card, the way I got the halo around it. I wasn't careful with stamping what was on the stamparatus, and then I pressed hard because you have to press a little bit harder with a watercolor texture paper. So I stamped a couple of tags. This is using, one of them is using our TaylorMade Tags stamps. Dies, TaylorMade Tag dies, and the Stylish Shapes dies, both of which I use quite a lot. And I made these two tags and thought that they would work on here. That one is okay, but I didn't really like the hole in the tag, so I'll save that for something else. But this one I thought worked okay. but it was a little bit long. So I'm just going to trim that off a little bit. And then I'm going to add that on to the card. So I think a lot of us make little goofs like this, so it's just good to be able to fix them up with adding a tag that way. And I'll put this on here. All right, so we've got the two different cards. These were both used with the watercolor wash background method. I did make another video a couple of weeks ago with a very similar watercolor wash technique, and you can find it in my YouTube channel. I hope you'll have a look there. I hope you like this technique and that you'll enjoy the cards, and I hope that you will subscribe. And let's see here. I'll put my blog here. All of the measurements for this card you will find on my blog, which is listed there. Also, if you click on my name below this video and go to the About tab, you'll find my blog link there as well. As I mentioned, I hope you'll subscribe. I'm going to be doing some ocean-themed cards in the next little while. And I hope you'll join me for those, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.